Well, the Panthers' offensive issues appear to be fixed, but on defense, they have a world of issues. We'll break down the Panthers' 34-24 loss to Cincinnati right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube, where I am live right now and live following every Carolina Panthers game. At any time there's any big breaking news. This past Monday, there was not. Hopefully, moving forward, we'll also have some quiet Mondays, but I'm thinking that we're probably not going to have a quiet Monday tomorrow, as there was significant injury on the Panthers today, and I don't think it's going to be good news just based off of historically what happens when those things go on. But if you ever miss a live show on YouTube, it's going to be right here on YouTube, just in the playlist. So go check it out, or you can listen to it wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'll be right here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions into me right now. Get them in now, Monday, Tuesday. Record around 5 or 6 on Tuesday. So get those questions in before then, and I'll answer them on the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Carolina Panthers 24, the Cincinnati Bengals 34, and the good vibes, unfortunately, could only last 1 week here in Carolina. But I'm not super discouraged, because I would way rather watch a 34-24 loss where the Panthers offense can move the ball down the field than I would watch a 47-10 loss like we saw week 1, or 26-3 the last time the Panthers were here at Bank of America Stadium. But that does not necessarily make anybody feel any better about the fact the Panthers lost a game that I honestly feel like they could have won. Not going to say should have, but absolutely they had a chance to win this football game. And it goes back to what Dave Canales said after the game. We've got to finish. We have to execute. And that's where I'm looking at the Panthers today. The opening drive, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wow, back-to-back weeks, excellent game script opening the game by Dave Canales. The Panthers went 20 straight games without an opening drive touchdown, and it looked like they're going to have back-to-back games of an opening drive touchdown, get down to the goal line, and just can't make it happen. On second down, great throw by Andy Dalton to Deontay Johnson, not able to hold on. You watch the replay, Dax Hill's able to punch it out. That's just a good play by the defense. Maybe it's credited as a drop, probably is. I don't really think that's on Johnson. That happens. The defense, they get paid too. Just a good play by him. The frustrating thing, though, is this is a team that ran the ball effectively today. Ran the ball effectively last week, and really any time in these first 4 weeks of the season they've wanted to run the football, they, for the most part, have had success running the football. But today, at the beginning of the game on the goal line, really couldn't get it done. Third down, they're running up the gut. You got really to the right side. Robert Hunt, your $100 million right guard, is flying right on his face as Chuba Hubbard's trying to get into the goal line. Don't love to see that. Then on 4th and goal, I love the decision. You got the ball all the way down there. You're at the 1 yard line. You have to be able to get a yard, be able to score a touchdown instead of settling for a field goal. So I have no issues at all. And I understand that plenty of people commented as the Panthers fail to get that touchdown. Why are you in the shotgun on a short yardage situation? Totally understand that. And this is a conversation that people have all across football, whether it's in the NFL or in college, where we have these shotgun offenses that, for whatever reason, why don't you want to get under center when you're in a short yardage situation? I don't know. But the way that Daryl Moose Johnson on the Fox broadcast broke it down, the Panthers basically had a 3v3 under offensive line versus the Bengals defensive line. The Bengals defensive line that did not have BJ Hill playing in this game. They were also missing Sheldon Rankins. This is not a defensive line that has been good for Cincinnati outside of Trey Hendrickson so far this season. And Chris Jenkins Jr. is able to blow up the play, pushes Austin Corbett back. Chandler Zavala also not able to get the push, and the Panthers get stopped right there. You should have been up 7-0. Instead, it's 0-0. You got a drop, which I think is just a good play by the defense on second down. You are not able to score on third down and not able to score on fourth down. It's 0-0, and that's frustrating. But they get a stop. Cincinnati punts it back to Carolina, and then you get an interception. And that's a play where Ike Ekwonu is trying to block Hendrickson, who's a good player. He really gets him away from the quarterback to where Johnson's on the broadcast saying, like, that's not necessarily you want to be as a rusher, but he's able to still get a paw in there, affect the throw. That leads to an interception. Cincinnati goes down, and they score a touchdown. They're able to finish their drive. The Panthers come back after they're down in the second half. They're down 28-14. They go for the fake punt, and I don't hate that decision at all. Felipe Franks catches the ball, but then gets knocked out. You got to be able to hold on to it. So you go back to Deontay Johnson opening drive. You got to find a way to hold on to it, even if that's a great play by the defender. Felipe Franks, you got to be able to find a way to hold on to it, even if that's another good play by the defender. You got to finish. You got to execute, and they did not do that several times in this game. And another time later on, they are able to get an interception. It's a terrible throw by Joe Burrow. And we have talked about the Panthers' lack of a pass rush. It's opened up. It's shown up, rather, in certain situations so far this season. And we saw it where Joe Burrow was running around. He did it earlier in that drive, which was just a Houdini move by Burrow. He's running around, trying to find Ja'Marr Chase, throws it down the field, and it gets intercepted by Xavier Woods, which great play by the defense to finally make something happen after they just got pushed around, could not make tackles. We're going to talk about the defense here in just a moment. We just want to start off talking about what really kind of played the Panthers today, just overall inability to finish and execute. You get to a 3rd down and 3, Xavier Legette gets open. Is it the best throw by Andy Dalton? No. Is it a throw that Xavier Legette should have caught? Absolutely. And it wasn't his only drop. Opening drive of the second half as well has a drop. Jonathan Mingo later on after the Panthers get a stop. He has a drop on 1st down that kills a drive and has him go 3 and out as they're in the shadow of their own goal line. But really the Legette one, that's killer. You keep that drive going. Yes, you get the field goal, but instead you want to be able to score a touchdown. So a situation where Cincinnati, they get an interception, they punch it in for 7. When the Panthers get an interception, they get a critical drop on 3rd down and 3, have to kick a field goal, and then they're still chasing. And I appreciate this team did not give up. Like, they weren't going to quit, I didn't think. You get down 17, your defense not really getting stops. Defense able to get a couple stops. They get the interception. The offense able to score. And you're just not able to get enough done offensively and defensively in this game, really defensively. And it's tough to see because this was a team that was flying high after last week, but you're only 1 week away from being right back down to the bottom and trying to figure out what went wrong as Panthers now fall to 1-3 on the season. But they did not finish, did not execute in certain situations today, and that leads to them not being able to win this game today. And another situation, too, when looking at this, I was looking at just where they were at halftime, being down by 7 did not really feel like a fair score line because they didn't punch it in to start off the game. But also at the end of the half, and I'm not someone who complains about officiating, and that's not what I'm going to do right now either. I don't want to sit here ever blame the officials. No team has ever done anything perfectly to where the officials completely screwed them. Now, situationally, you can be screwed and not appreciate the calls, but also, did you do everything perfectly to avoid that situation? No, that's never been the case in any football game in the history of the game. At least I don't think. Maybe there was a situation way back in the day where it happened, but that did not happen today. The DPI call on Mike Jackson, I didn't really love it. I don't necessarily have the biggest of qualms. Like Mike Pereira, you're going to say that, oh, he's a former ref. He's going to stop the refs. That guy plenty of times. And he's been on plenty of Panther games where he says, that's a bad call. I don't like that. He keeps it pretty straight. And he said that it would have been illegal contact had the ball not been in the air. And that's the tough thing. Illegal contact is a 5-yard penalty. And Mike Jackson was called for one earlier in the game on that Bengals first touchdown drive in the end zone. But legal contact's 5-yard penalty. Whereas pass interference, that's a spot foul. And it puts the ball 1st and goal for the Bengals. Don't love it. Yes, there was contact. Maybe he impedes. I don't know. That just didn't. That felt pretty harsh there for me. And then the second one, I really didn't like this call. The first one I can understand. The second one, and you got Moose Johnson on the broadcast. He's also saying, like, I don't like these. And he's an offensive guy, but the second one where T. Higgins and Jason Horn are both battling. And if anything, it's a no call. And if it's not a no call, it felt more like OPI to me. And they did get an OPI later on in the game against T. Higgins, but a little bit too late for that. It felt more like an OPI than it was on J.C. Horn being DPI. It just gave another first down, put him close to the goal line, and a situation where Carolina was stopping Cincinnati, had him on 3rd and goal, 6 seconds left. Joe Burrow throws it out to the flat to Zach Moss. He slips. Nick Scott comes up to slip as well. That's got to be a play that's made. You got to be able to tackle, got to be able to stop that. And if the Panthers execute, they finish that drive. We're not sitting here complaining about the officiating. Your team had an opportunity to make the play, and they did not make the play. So we got to finish. We have to execute. Two things the Carolina Panthers not do today in their 24-34 loss at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, the previously winless Bengals who are now 1-3. The Panthers fall to 1-3. Head to Chicago next week to face off against a Bears team that I think they can have success against. But what is the defense going to be able to do next week and moving forward? Last week, you felt good about the defense. This week, week 1, week 2, probably not feeling so great about Jero Avero's team or unit. We'll talk more about the Panthers defense and their failings today here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Football season is back, and the best way to get the games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easy to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. The Panthers fall 34-24 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals as they're now 1-3 on the season. Head to Chicago next week in a game where Panthers head coach Dave Canales said they did not finish, were not able to execute in certain spots, and that certainly was the case. But really, it was the case on defense as the Panthers unit. As someone told me in my DMs on Twitter at Julian Council, this unit regressed, and I told them, no, they did not. This was never a good defense, and when we had the conversation about whether it was time to bench Bryce Young or what Andy Dalton potentially could do for the Panthers, I kept coming back and saying it doesn't really matter because the defense is terrible. And we saw last week they had success against the Raiders. Why did they have success against the Raiders? The Raiders are the worst running team in the NFL. So the Panthers didn't have any issues because Amir White doesn't break tackles. The Raiders don't get any push off the ball, so they're not going to be able to exploit what the Panthers' weakness is, and that's stopping the run and generally just tackling. And Gardner Minshew may have gone on a road week 2 and beat the Ravens with his arm, but he's not going to do that every single week, especially against a secondary that, when healthy, I think is middle of the road, fine for Carolina, but you have an excellent player in J.C. Horn. So that's why they had success last week, and I also think that they were just energized by having Andy Dalton and feeling like they had an offense on the other side of the ball that could help them and give them some time to have a break. But today, we went right back to what we saw week 1. I told y'all last week, I don't really care how well that defense played against the Raiders. You're never going to explain away giving up 9 straight scoring drives against the New Orleans Saints in week 1. In week 2, it wasn't like they're out on the field all day. Like, yes, they didn't get a lot of stuff. Fine, the offense was not good week 2, but they were getting gashed on the ground in the first half. It wasn't like it was the fourth quarter. They got hands on their knees, breathing, gasping for air, and then they're getting gashed. No, they were getting gashed from the beginning. Like, this is a bad defense because they do not have the requisite talent. And also, just guys are dropping like flies. And the tackling is embarrassing at this point in time, y'all, to be professionals and to miss this many tackles. And it's not just one guy. It's everyone missing tackles on this defense. Jamar Chase was a non-factor in this game until the second quarter when Joe Burrow finally was able to get him the ball. They're running his zone defense. J.C. Horn's line up on him. He passes him off. He finds middle of the zone. Burrow delivers it on time. And then after that, it's just bad news bears type of stuff from the Panthers defense. You have Xavier Woods coming in, trying to throw his shoulder at him instead of tackling. And of course, that doesn't work because Jamar Chase is a pretty big physical guy, even at his smaller stature. Like he's 6 foot, but that's a thick 6 foot. He bounces off of that. Charles Harris, with like a middle school effort to try and tackle, breaks out of that. And then finally, Troy Hill, he jumps for his legs, completely whiffs, and there goes Jamar Chase, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, running down the sideline as your defense just looks ridiculous. And as you can see my thumbnail, that's exactly what we saw from that defense as they're chasing after him. Just unacceptable. Just embarrassing effort from the Panthers defensively right there. The Zach Moss touchdown right there at the end of the half. You have an opportunity to go to the half, be tied. Yes, the refs don't love the DPI calls. Totally get it. But you stay on your feet or you just get there. And the guys got there too late. But you have to stay on your feet if you're Nick Scott. And did he have the right cleats on? Is the filter? I don't care. You got to make that play. You make that play. That takes 7 off the board, takes 3 off the board as well. And you're tied. And you're not immediately down 2 scores in the second half. And you saw what the Bengals came out and did in that second half. The first half, they rushed the ball 6 times for 11 yards. And we talked about this on the crossover and on Friday. The Panthers got to come back here, stop the run. Had a good week against the Raiders, the worst running team in the NFL. But the Bengals, according to EPA, number 2 in the NFL. But they were 31st in rushing attempts. They have not been dedicated to running the ball. But they were dedicated to open up the half. And they were completely dedicated the entire second half, where they had 25 carries for 130 yards in the second half after having 6 attempts for 11 yards in the first half, wearing on that Panthers defensive line. And that ends up being part of the difference in today's game, where they can't tackle Chase Brown. They can't tackle Zach Moss. They can't tackle Jamar Chase. They can't tackle anyone out there. And if you can't tackle, you're not physical enough up front, you're going to have a hard time being any competent to good offense in the NFL. Like, they played a bad offense last week, a team that doesn't run the football. And that's why they were able to have success that they had in that game. But today, they got Cincinnati, a team that can throw and can run when they want to. And it was the same stuff that we saw week 1 and in week 2. Another one, you saw Xavier Woods, he missed a tackle. Actually, on a 3rd and 17, that was a first down, but got called back because Shaq Thompson was getting held. Even if Shaq doesn't get held, I still feel like that Zach Moss gets that first down. And then J.C. Horn had one later on that was a first down. Just everybody was not able to tackle, and this is just not a good defense. And the injuries now are piling up. Derrick Brown is out for the rest of the season with his meniscus injury. Shai Tuttle, who's really not been a good player for them anyways, but he's out. Currently with a foot injury, missed last week, missed again this week. We'll see if he's back next week. Has not been significant enough to where they want to place him on IR. So you have to imagine he'll be back either next week against the Bears, the week after that, I believe against Atlanta. So he's going to come back at some point in time and try to help them out in whatever way he possibly can. But Shaq Thompson, he goes down with injury, and they say it's a heel. And looking at and listening to Dave Canales, he came out and said that they don't know the severity of it, but that was a non-contact injury. And this is probably going to go right back to what fans have always been saying about David Tepper being cheap with the field turf and not having real grass. And one of the most outspoken members in that locker room about the fact that they don't play on grass is Shaq Thompson. And he had an issue back in Dallas where he got hurt because it was field turf. And here we are in Charlotte, non-contact injury. Maybe if it's because it feels like to me it's going to be an Achilles. If you're calling it a heel, the guy's hobbling off the field. They got to bring the cart to him. He can't even walk to the locker room, towel over his head. It feels like that's what it's going to be. So when I was saying at the top of the show, we may have another busy Monday of news, because I think that news is going to be Shaq Thompson's done for the rest of the year, and probably his Carolina Panthers career is done as well. Hopefully that's not the case, but typically in those situations, y'all, we know what typically that means. And if he's done for the rest of the year, means Trevor Wallace got to step up. He came in late in the game with Clyde and Cherilus and had a situation where he got washed and able to run fit. And Bengals get a nice gain on that run game, but he's going to have to step up now. If Shaq's going to miss some significant time or any time at all. And then Josie Jewell, he got injured as well later on that same drive, as Shaq got injured at the beginning of the third, right at the end of the third quarter. And Josie Jewell gets injured later on that drive in the fourth quarter. And he limped off with what they're calling a hamstring and groin injury. didn't look good. Panthers going to have to go out and get some more linebackers, maybe elevate some guys in the practice squad, or go get some guys off the street or off somebody else's practice squad. It's a situation where when you're 4 weeks into a season, and I had someone ask me this when I was doing my live show on Bleacher Report, like, can they bring in guys defensively? You can only do so much. Like, the best time to add players to your roster prior to the season was going to be during training camp in the preseason, when you're looking out across the league and seeing what guys are doing. And the Panthers made a trade to get Mike Jackson, and that's helped them so far earlier this season. But they felt like they were going to be fine at linebacker. The depth was always going to be kind of a question mark there, as you had two veterans in and behind them. Claude Cherylis, Trevin Wallace, a rookie. You don't have guys who really played in the NFL or played significant snaps at all, even when they've been in the league. So now they're possibly in a situation where that's going to make things even tougher, where Derrick Brown's out for the rest of the year. Shaq may be trending that way. Josie Jewell, we'll see what the diagnosis is on that come either Monday or Wednesday, or I guess even Tuesdays, when a lot of times we find out when guys are going on IR and their off day. We'll find out about that. But if you're missing your two starting linebackers, at least one of them, and Derrick Brown for the rest of the year or for a significant amount of time, like, that's just going to be really hard to have a competent defense. There was already questions overall talent. Like, DB is a great player, but everybody else on the defensive line is not good. I think Ashawn Robinson's actually played fairly well so far this season, all things considered, being a part of a pretty bad defensive line right now. And the linebacker play, I think Shaq's good. Josie's been fine. But out behind them, you don't really know what you have. In that corner, JC's excellent. I think Mike Jackson's had a good start. Troy Hill has. It's just the defensive talent has not really been there. And I know people are going to blame Ajero Avero and be like, oh, he's not a good coordinator. You can only do so much when you have guys dropping like flies again this year, and they gut your defense in order to fix the offense. And then the quarterback they were trying to fix it for isn't even a quarterback after 2 weeks. So we'll see. It is what it is. Like, Dalton's here. The offense is competent, but the defensive issues haven't been solved, and I just don't really see how they're going to be. And I'm starting to think that, man, there might be a curse for the Panthers. And there's a billboard I drive by constantly on I-77, and 3 of those guys, they may be done. So we'll talk about the potential curse here in Carolina and just look ahead to the rest of the week and what this team, and also look at some positives from this game here as Panthers lose 34-24 against the Cincinnati Bengals at home on Sunday. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your favorite bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So again, Carolina Panthers fall 34-24 at home against Cincinnati Bengals. Were not able to finish or execute it according to their head coach, Dave Canales. Opportunity at the beginning of the game, not able to punch it in. Get an interception late to try and come back. Have to settle for a field goal. Other opportunities as well. The Panthers just were not able to come up with that, and kind of sound a lot like Ron Rivera used to tell us, missed opportunities. That's why they lost this game. That's in part with the defense that just is not a good defense. It is what it is at this point in time. Hopefully they get good news when it comes to Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell's injuries. Hopefully some young guys like Trevin Wallace, if they're asked to step up, hopefully they can, and we'll see. But this is the defense I expected to see this season. And even after last week, the great vibes, it's the defense that we're seeing, and I think we're going to see all year long. But we'll see what they're able to do moving forward. Now, speaking of the curse, anyone who lives in Charlotte, unfortunately, probably has to deal with I-77, which is just a horrid highway. Heading I-77 northbound, right in between the Tryon exit and in Clanton, there is a billboard to your left. It's a Coca-Cola billboard with a bunch of Panther players on it. You got Bryce Young up there. You got Shaq Thompson. You got Derrick Brown. You got J.C. Horn. I believe you have Taylor Moton as well. There's 6 Panther players. I've been meaning to write this down. The problem is I'm driving every time I see it, and I can't really take out my phone. But I looked at it a couple weeks ago, and I was like, okay, well, Bryce Young's no longer the Panther starting quarterback, so I guess you don't really need to have him on the billboard. And then, well, before that, it was like, oh, well, Derrick Brown, he's now out for the rest of the season. So I guess you don't really need to have him on the billboard. And now, based off of the heel injury, and Canales says he doesn't know the severity of it, but I mean, let's be honest here. It's probably not the best news. Shaq Thompson may be gone. So we're looking at 3 of the 6 on that billboard, possibly done for the year or no longer in the roles that they had to start the year, thinking that Coca-Cola has cursed those guys. I'm hoping that's not the case. But that's just one thing that's just been eerie to me as I keep looking at it. I'm like, oh, he's gone. He's benched. Oh, no. So hoping good news for Shaq. But that's just one thing that I've just been looking at. But like, oh, man, don't let this be a real thing. So, yeah, that's where we're at. But looking at it overall, like, you hate to lose. The vibes are great last week, but I would rather lose like this if I'm watching a Panthers game. Rather watch them lose like this and watch what I saw week 1 and week 2. The defense is what it is, but you rather put up points like Green Bay last year. Put up points. The quarterback looked good. You felt good about it, even if your defense couldn't get a stop and you could not win that football game. Like, these are far more palatable as a viewing experience than what we sat there and watched the first 2 weeks. And like, for me overall, like, it's killing me because I'm a defense guy. I'm a North Carolina Tar Heel fan. So I got to watch the worst defense in college football on Saturdays. And now it looks like I got to watch one of the worst defenses in the NFL on Sundays. And that's something that's just going to kill me. But what I do love is the run game. Like, it's defense, run the ball. Like, that's what I love about football. You want to throw the ball 60 times? Screw that. I want to demoralize the man in front of me. I want to move him out the way, physically dominate dudes. Like, that's kind of football I like to see. And we got to see that today. Like, they ran the ball well, especially that first half. And the dedication, we had questioned that the first couple weeks. No question in the first half. 19 carries, 84 yards, touchdown for the Panthers. Chuba Hubbard had 13 carries, 47 yards in that first half. And then overall in the game, he had 18 carries, 104 yards. You prefer him to get more than 5 carries in the second half, especially when he's getting 5.8 yards per clip. Even Miles Sanders, 6 carries, 32 yards, 5.3, but 29 carries, 155 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. You love to see that from the Panthers. Needed guys to step up outside wide receiver. And even if Leggett had 2 pretty costly drops, especially the second one in this game, I thought that you got what you wanted to get from him, particularly in the first half. We had 5 receptions, 49 yards, and his first career touchdown. Overall, 6 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown, 11 yards per reception. And it's a guy he's gonna learn. And you look at Thielen not being in this game. What probably hurt you not having him was when you saw those drops. Now, he had a drop last week against the Raiders on a 3rd down. So it's not like he's infallible, but he's a pretty sure-handed receiver. The Johnson drops, the Mingo drops possibly don't happen if Adam Thielen is in this game. So that's probably where you miss him. But you're telling me that you can depend on potentially 9 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown between Leggett and Mingo like the Panthers got today, and then Deontay Johnson give you 7 receptions, 83 yards and a touchdown. I think you feel pretty good about that if you're going to have one guy who's dynamic and you got 2 guys who are basically combining for a stat line for just one really good receiver, which is basically what they did, minus, I mean, it was just 7 yards short. Johnson was, and 2 receptions short of what they produced together. I don't hate that. So I'm not going to sit here and be hard on Leggett. Like, you hate to see that, the drops, but he's a guy who is showing you that he actually he's got some juice. He's somebody who can help this team moving forward. Dalton, 25 of 40, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns to pick, which is more, I don't know if that's necessarily on him. Could he have stepped up? Joe Person asked that to Dave Canales. Dave said, I got to watch the film. I haven't really gone back and looked back at that play. Just Icky seemed to get beat, and that ended up being a turnover. Hendrickson's a really good player. It happens. So offensively, they're competent. Defensively, it's a rough unit to watch, and it's probably going to be a rough unit to watch the rest of the year. They're going to have better days than what we saw today, but it feels like this is kind of going to be what it's going to be, especially with Derrick Brown out for the rest of the year and quite possibly a significant injury to Shaq Thompson. Let me check Twitter as I'm going to see if there's any injury updates, as all those insiders are typically putting stuff out there. So no, not seeing anything right now. Of course, they'll get an x-ray probably after this game, and we'll get some report, maybe even tonight, about the severity of that injury, hoping for the best for Shaq Thompson, as God would hate to see that. Would hate to see 10 years in Carolina and for him to end it if it's an Achilles, which it feels like that's going to be the case. So yeah, rather watch this kind of loss than the losses in week 1 and week 2. But offense is going to give him a chance. And like Chicago, We went over it. Like, Chicago's not a team that impresses me. They get the win today against the Rams. That's a beat up Rams team. Falcons will be tough because of the run game. Commanders, I mean, that's still a team that they can compete with. The Broncos, like, there are still games that are winnable on the schedule because of Andy Dalton being your quarterback and having enough off, like having a good running back, good run game, having a dynamic receiver, another guy who's ascending, and Xavier Legette. There's enough on offense for this team to be competitive week in and week out. The problem for the Panthers is their defense, and it's probably going to continue to be the problem until they're able to scheme it up. Guys get healthy, because there's still one of them out there who's on PUP. Maybe he comes back. He's eligible to come back after this game. Looking for Amari Barno. Don't know how much you're expecting out of him. Dane Jackson as well, even though secondary doesn't feel like it's that big of it. It doesn't feel like that's the issue. But we'll see what they're able to do. But Panthers fall 34-24 at home, now 1-3, head to Chicago next week to face off against Caleb Williams. And I'm sure a bunch of Bears fans saying, thank you, Carolina, even though Caleb's not really lighting up the world at all. But we'll see what happens moving forward. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter, at Julian Council. Where on Wednesday, I'll be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is at me or DM me right now with what your question is, and I'll answer it over on Wednesday on the show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday.